Sound check. Check one, check two.
Hello, Heidi Moss Erickson. Welcome back. Welcome back to the show.
Hello, I'm so glad to be back. I'm just such a huge fan, and then to be on it is just even more icing on the cake.
Oh, well, right back at you. I mean, for those who haven't caught up, with your previous show with us, it was fabulous, and I've been a big fan of yours for a long time. And so the fact that we've been able to connect has just been a joy. And you've got some. Are we allowed to share your news?
Absolutely,
please.
And I also want to clarify my pronouns are. He,
her,
she, but that's okay. This is a game. This is about play.
That's a typo. That is purely a typo.
And I love it because I do feel it's important to, explore all boundaries.
It is. But do you know what we need to do? Your pronouns are she, her. Yes.
Her. Yes. But that's fine.
Consider it.
Laugh because we're going to be talking.
Consider it changed. So. Can you see it's changed there?
Yes, that's perfect.
No, purely a typo. That one. I replaced your name. That's from my last guest, who I believe you would know. That was from when I had Ken Bozeman on.
Ken, he's a friend of mine. Yeah,
yeah,
I love Ken.
Yeah.
See, look at you guys are absorbing all of the world's yumminess.
We try to absorb. We try to absorb all the world's yumminess. That's what we try to do.
Yeah. So yeah.
Thank you for Thank you for highlighting that.
That's okay. I just didn't want to confuse people.
No, that's a good idea.
Yeah. But my new job is at the University of Pacific, and I'm very excited about it just because I think it's a unique institution and it's in California. And so I'm just thrilled and honored to be a part of that family, because once you find your tribe, as you know, it just makes everything else easier. So
yeah, and I think people do, people who are maybe not as involved in the academia space of singing may not realize just how nuanced academia and pedagogy can become, right down to quite almost a granular level. And so it is wonderful to know that, you have found yourself in this position, and I mean, to their benefit, let's face it. I mean, wow.
You're too nice. No, and they let me play, which is the most important thing. Because
let's use that as a segue for today's conversation, because like I said right at the beginning, then play is a word and an intent that I use in my studio a lot, and it's born out of the nature of getting back to why we do what we do, and I wanted to kick off because I've read you sent me an article, which I think I've read 3 or maybe 4 times. Not because it wasn't hard to understand. It was just so, and it's short too. Like it's not a long article, but it really resonated with me, and I loved the ideas that and so I want to kind of unpack it for everyone today. And because I the other thing too with play in practice is I want my students, and I want people within the Voice Essentials community to get the most out of their vocal practice. Everyone's time poor. So the more we can get out of our vocal practice and the more fun it can become, I think the better. Can you provide an all encapsulating definition of play?
Yeah, I think it is a very broad term, and I think we can have subcategories, but what's most important to know about play is that it is a biological imperative, that we are wired to learn via play. And I think as we get older, we forget that. But if you watch babies a lot, which is what I love to do, you really see that they explore without judgment. And what that is doing is it is giving the brain varied information and experiences in order to then get along in the world, to figure out their landscape, to figure out how their muscles move, to figure out all of the things that make us human. And what has happened in singing is that I always say, we are not a piano. The voice is such a unique outlier instrument. Yet I think we developed training strategies more like instruments. And so I'm trying to shift it back to what really our brain and body want to do, which is to learn through exploration without judgment. And I actually give all my students, I have monsters, and they're responsive. They're the only ones that are allowed to judge. And mind you, I teach a lot of adults mostly. And I think I probably have given out well over 1,000 of the little guys, because I think judgment and trying to listen and fix as we sing is the enemy of learning, actually. And so it gives that kind of permission that he's going to be the one that he has him. By the way, this is a him guy. That's the thing that is going to suck all the negative energy out of the room.
Why? And because those little characters are quite fun. Why exactly. Why is it so important that play is associated with being fun? What's the critical essence of that?
I think in part, if you want to get, molecular, there is a dopamine kind of response with play in terms of dopamine is sort of seeking and reward, and play affords you the opportunity, and this is how babies learn as well, and children, and we all learn this way, to seek to have that dopamine surge and not get sort of the stress hormone like cortisol or the anxiety that gets your heart rate up with adrenaline or judgment. So there's sort of these neurochemical markers of what play does that's pleasurable, because you do get a reward out of it. It's sort of even why is laughter therapeutic? People study that. Chimpanzees laugh. And that's the other thing, is all animals play to learn. You'll see puppies do it, kittens do it. So it's one of those things that is universal in our mammalian group of beings. Yeah.
When we talk, when I use the word play, I'm often using it as a permission giving opportunity to explore, to experiment, like without judgment that you're talking about. Right. And the instruction often is given in the first instance. I often give that instruction in a very generalized sense. Right. But there is targeted play as well, isn't there? Can you can you unpack the difference between those two, like generalized play and targeted play?
Yes. So even with generalized play, like I have these feelings cards that I'll pull out. So generalized play, it still needs to be granular, meaning sometimes too blank a canvas for a singer is challenging.
Yeah.
But I also say that when you think of songs and we say, oh, I'm singing a sad song, so I have to be authentic and I have to be sad. That is true in the performance, but we're talking practice. And what you want to do in practice, the goal of practice is to optimize the vocal motor skills so it can be automated. So that when you're in performance, you have flexibility to draw in whatever spontaneous creativity, artistry that you want in that moment. The only way to have automation and flexibility in performance is if you practice diversely. So for example, I do this a lot. I'll pull out a feelings card. So say you're singing a sad song, I will pull out terrified, or I will pull out, overjoyed. So even though it's a sad song, these other emotional cues or character cues, like pretend you're a preacher or a cabaret singer, even if it's completely opposite to what the song intention is, it will generate a motor response that the brain will remember, and that you may say, hey, I know this is a sad song, but when I sang it like giddy and twice as fast, there was some cool stuff that happened with my voice that I liked. And your brain likes efficiency. It latches on to the things that work. This is how babies learn to walk, right? They're not learning by dreading what happens when they fall down. A toddler doesn't go, I'm such a bad toddler, that was a terrible toddle, right? They capitalize on the successes. So this kind of generalized play, I use character, I use emotion. The targeted play is when there's, say, a typical pedagogical issue that voice teachers face. And whether you teach, Broadway or classical or even pop, there's this tendency to want to add weight and effort as you ascend. And I think that's biological too. I always joke that it's because whenever we had to go high as humans, it was always to go, there's a tiger over there. And so there's this natural tendency to want to add weight. So you can use targeted play, and I'll have little things like, this is my resonance ball. And if it's an interval that's like, right, they have this wide interval and they go, da, da, I'll have them throw the ball down. That's one play thing. It's like, or we'll play catch. I'll also have them come at the note from above. So it's like, da, da, da. And I'll just have them use the ball and follow the resonance. And so again, it's not saying, can you be a little lighter up there? And then they start listening. It's giving them an action that really recruits the instrument as a whole, rather than trying to get at parts, because there are 100 muscles trying to coordinate. So trying to say, be a little lighter, what does that really mean? So this gives them a gesture, an object, an attitude. Or sometimes I'll say, pretend you're hugging a baby sheep. I have no idea why baby sheeps enter my teaching studio, but there's a lot of baby sheeps. There's like, if I want light and energetic, I'll be like, oh, they're little baby sheeps that look like clouds that you have to tickle their bellies as they're bouncing above you, imagery like that. But that's how the brain wants to vocalize. Yeah. The piano doesn't want to be played that way. Vocal is for communication. It's for detailed communication. And that's what this play idea does.
Do you think there's something in because many of the activities that you were just talking us through had a sense of externalization? What is in that, if anything? Is it because there's often this sense that we're putting it out of oneself and getting the voice out of oneself. What do you think's involved in that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a complex question. I think there's the one piece is the physicalization is part of the vocal motor learning. So we have and that's a neuroscience geek thing, where our two laryngeal motor cortices are near our limbs. And so gesture, I have a whole talk on gesture and why that's important. So that's one physicalization. The externalization, I do think the voice is such an intimate, personal thing that being a character or playing a different emotion or being silly does take us outside of that ego, maybe, perhaps, especially if I'm crazy alongside of them. I think that helps. I think it helps if the teacher is, by demonstrating these things, it makes people feel a little more comfortable. Now, sometimes you want, of course, stillness, and you can find playness in that. Sometimes I'll have people like close their eyes and pretend they have a tiny little gift in their hand that's only for them. And again, it's storytelling. And again, this goes back to why we vocalize. Play is a fundamental thing in biology. Vocalization is fundamental to our communication. And so we're combining those things in play. And then ultimately, what that does is it gives the brain information. The analogy I make is the weather. Singing is predictive. Speaking is predictive. Everything you do is calculated in advance. It's crazy to think about that. It feels bizarre, but we even know up to a half a second, even pitch is calculated. So how is it calculated? Through experience, and it needs algorithms. It's not a computer, but it needs experience to what I call triangulate to become automated. So you're giving it more varied information. A lot of times we just try to focus on a single target. And that's why in performance, people can fall off the rails because they're like, I practice it perfectly, but they only practice it one way in a certain context. So you want to practice things slow, practice things fast, practice things loud, practice things quiet, and also practice things differently. Not all the time, because then that would be crazy. But I liken it to ironing. There's going to be one or two spots in a piece that sort of are the troublemakers. And I tend to focus my play on those. And then once those are ironed out, everything else falls into place. And I'll do the whole piece with a different character just a couple times, like 3 different ways. But the targeted stuff usually is 1 or 2 places in a piece.
Having done 2 hours of ironing yesterday, I can share with you that the hard area is around the pocket. I find round pockets, it's hard to
I hear you. Collars for me, though, I don't know.
No, I find the collar's really easy. I iron the back of the collar.
Okay. Yeah.
There you go.
See? We each have our own trouble spots, right?
We do.
Just like singing.
We do. I wonder, you know, I'm a great believer in not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I think in modern pedagogy, the teaching of voice, we're constantly swinging the pendulum. You know,
right.
We have things that go in and out of fashion, in my opinion, far too quickly. And, you know, and as a result, I'm constantly in search of an opportunity to find the middle ground, you know, and so you know, understanding the benefits of our historical approach to practice. How can we best integrate these new understandings around play and have them, you know, work in with what we also know works in our more historically traditional approach?
Yes, that's a great question. I mean, I tend to customize for every student anyway, but in a typical lesson, I will reserve the last 15 minutes to run repertoire that they're working on in this holistic way. So giving a different character or giving a different emotion. So that's sort of the end. That's the general play. And it also it ends the lesson well, because again, they get to experiment and with different emotions or characters. Within, say, vocal, you know, exercises, for example, I will use targeted play or particular pedagogical things when we're working on the piece. Like I mentioned with the high note, I even have these videos of students that they let me take of addressing these specific things. So in an exercise, I do think it benefits a singer to have an intention and an affect, even in an exercise. Now, that could be something emotional. It can also be something physical. So I like drawing. I have a paintbrush. So it's like if they're doing a scale, you know, sometimes it's like they can get stuck. So it's like I'll make them like do a figure 8, you know, or infinity sign, like, like stuff like that. So that way you can sort of get it both. That's where the targeted play comes in. Because I think
sorry.
Oh, no. Because I was just going to say, it's easy for a singer to get in their head.
Yeah.
So that's why you can use one or the other. The other thing that's important to know is that we're terrible multitaskers. So I remember I used to have teachers and coaches that would like do this, and this. We really can't. So it allows even the teacher to step back and say, okay, let's just focus on this.
Yeah.
gesture. And sometimes you'll get resolution in the technique with sort of that singular broad thought than trying to micromanage more granular things with too many inputs.
Yeah. I think what taught me that idea of, because my approach is very much I try to work in layering different things, and you know, having the person focus on really one or sometimes two things at once, but then we might layer a third thing in there. Why
Right.
is it that we can't, you know, give this the brain stuff about why don't we multitask? You know, because there's the old you know thing of, oh, guys don't multitask very well, but actually it's human beings don't multitask well, right?
Nobody does. Right. Well, it has to, the neuroscience of it is very simple, is that each task requires different calculations and networks. And so when you're trying to do something simultaneous, what happens is there's a divide and conquer. And so it'll have to skip a step, right? So it'll put one part on hold. And so there'll be this toggling that not only makes it less accurate, it takes more time.
Yeah.
So when I do layering, I liken it to, you know, I had teenagers who were learning how to drive a car. It's like, there are things that become automated, and you can start to sense in a student, like when one skill is becoming more automated. And for me, that's when I feel like I can layer more, is when, is like, now my daughter isn't, you know, breaking every 2 seconds, right? She can, so it's that idea of, you know, oh, there's a head,
I'm laughing because I'm just about to start teaching my third child how to drive, and and having done it twice already, I'm not looking forward to it.
But it's one of those things, right? Like
it is.
It's like they do it, and then suddenly they're fine. And so singing really is very similar in that way.
Absolutely.
That it's this complex motor thing that at the beginning it's like, oh my God, there's so many things, and then one thing becomes automated. So that's one element of that, and the multitasking. So that's the main reason. Also, I think we skip poise, and that can solve a lot of problems. I think a lot of singers, myself included, is like, I'm an Energizer bunny. I want to jump in. I want to, you know, but singing requires a beat to think about. So I will use this a lot, where I want you to hear the first note in your head. I want you to even hear the first 3 notes, how you want to sound. I'll even have them do, I say, pick 3 versions in the sky. So it's like, sing that first note. It's like, duh, duh. And I'll have them do it in different characters, because it's like a lawnmower. You want to jumpstart the whole process. So I think that step of hearing what you want to sing, maybe playing with the first few notes, because once they go, then the automation happens. But I think that those first few notes in a lot of things, even in exercises, are sometimes the ones that need them. Or they're your pockets in ironing, right? They're the ones that, and you can do silent things and take time and even play a little bit with the first few notes to jump start it, and you will have less to fix later. I think what happens is when we rush, or when we just go on from one to the next, or multitask, we can think something's not working when it's just a matter of the order is off.
Yeah.
Of what we're trying to get a singer to do.
I just want to circle back to some comments you made at the very beginning, and that is, you referred to you know, removing judgment-free practice, and it just occurred to me that so often we think of judgment as being a process that is in hindsight. I'm judging that which has taken place. But I wonder, to what degree do we trip ourselves up with judgment before we've even created a note? Can you talk to that brain process, and perhaps provide us with some thoughts around, you know, because we talk about judgment-free singing and it just rolls off the tongue, but all of us All of us struggle with it.
1,000%. I always like ask people like, oh yeah, maybe once in my life I had that performance where I felt like it was great, but I don't remember it. Like you can't remember how you did it or what happened. It's almost like, because you were very present, right? So you almost can't judge the good, because when it's good, you're in the zone, you're in flow state, which is another neuroscience thing.
Yes.
But as far as anticipating, that's what music performance anxiety is.
Yes.
And I think there's several things. The neuroscience part of it is usually there's something in the piece that they're anticipating, perhaps. That's one thing that could happen, in which case there is what I call the therapeutic way to get through that. There is a DACC is a part in the brain that they've shown, actually in sports physiology, neuroscience, that when someone is anxious about a physical thing that they're going to do, and they have performance anxiety, this part of the brain lights up. It's a midbrain. And you can quiet that area of the brain. That's what meditation does, etc. But okay, I can't do that in the middle of the piece. So how do I work on that with a singer? Say that they're about to audition and they're always worried about this high note, which is one of those things in classical. I will take out that section for them. We're not going to run. A lot of singers just want to run it. They want to go from the beginning, go to the end, and that's their practice once they're auditioning. We take it out and we actually work on what's just before. And I call this play two. So what I'll do is you're going to sing what comes right before, because in the brain, that's when it activates. It's not activated when the note happens. It's activated. The anxiety happens right before and the brain lights up. So I'll have them just sing that and audiate the high note.
Interesting.
And then I'll have them sing it and then throw something, or sing it and snap, or sing it and just do something, but they have to only hear it in their head.
Yeah.
Or they have to only hear the note above it. And we'll do that for a little while so that they're practicing calming that beginning and singing that freely and settling down the DACC. Then they'll be, this happened to me at UC Davis the other day, where she sang it and she was like, oh my God, that was so easy. And again, what do you hear singers do? They're practicing the high note over and over again, right? They're not practicing where the alert comes in, where the brain's going, no, right?
Well, that really adds into my knowledge, because I'm often talking to students about the penultimate notes. And I often talk to them about a pole vaulter can often know how successful their leap is going to be, not at the apex point where they're going over the bar, but in the run up and the vault. And it's not about that final, apex moment. It's all in the lead up to. And so that's really interesting. You've really helped to fill out my understanding of that. Really interesting.
Yeah. And that's what I love about the brain part, because it does sort of really supplement sort of what we experience anecdotally.
Yes.
That's sort of how I feel about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's come back to the emotional side of things, because I suspect, that emotion is coming from a different part of the brain again, like it's another whole area. How do we as singers, given that we're not good multitaskers, how do we play in the area of emotion to the point where we're able to bring that emotion into our performance without getting lost in it? Because in performance, that can be a very dangerous thing to happen.
1,000%. I've cried on stage twice and it was mortifying. I've never laughed so hard or had a happy, it's usually the sad stuff that does it, that makes the voice fall apart.
Yes.
I do think, again, going back to the real goal I feel that's universal for all genres. I actually play a Bernadette Peters piece, is that automation. And when something is automated motor-wise, which does take a lot, then whatever happens in the moment is authentic, because that's what you want in performance. You want authenticity, and it can change. So that's the Bernadette Peters example is, she sings Not a Day Goes By. I don't know if you know that piece. If you don't, it's a Stephen Sondheim. Bernadette Peters is a musical theater singer. And she sung that song 1,000,000 times, right? This is one of her stock pieces. So it's very automated. There was a performance where 6 months prior, and it's about, Not a Day Goes By Where I Don't Think of You. Her husband had died about 6 months prior, suddenly in a car accident. And she had to sing that song.
Oh.
And it is the most moving thing I've ever seen, because she allowed the emotion, because you could visibly see, and it was a different interpretation than I've ever seen her do it. And that's what we want, right? We want this motor to sort of be flexible enough that we can bring an emotion that's relevant, because every time we sing, it's going to be a different thing. It's going to be a different venue. We're going to be in a different space mentally. We're going to be in a different space physically. So we need that flexibility. And the other thing we do in the system is that we learn a song and move on, learn a song and move on. And one thing that I've brought for myself that I'm bringing to my students is there's a song that they are going to live with as they go through their training, that they will always have. And that has been the coolest thing, because you see it evolve.
Yeah.
And then you see the flexibility, but it's always, we're all about on to the next, on to the next, on to the next. And so that, I think we miss out on the automaticity that can come. We can put it away for a few months and bring it back, but I will have this piece that they have to love, that they bring with them on their journey. Yeah.
I think in part that's driven by the one of the reasons why we see that journey take place with students is because so often, and I know as an undergrad student, I made this mistake every day of the week. I saw the task as needing to learn the lyrics and learn the melody, and that's a very two-dimensional task, and I mean, I never struggled with the melody, but often I struggled with learning the lyrics. But I never, well, I shouldn't say I never, because ultimately I learned to do it. But in my early years, what I didn't learn was the narrative, the story arc, and then learn to underpin that subterranean emotional waters that feed and give life to the lyric above it. What can a student do to play in that space, like emotionally? Because for some people, this could be a dangerous area. Like it could unlock things that we as singing teachers, it's not our lane to swim in when it comes to psychology, right?
Exactly. I have a strong opinion about singing teachers staying in their lane, and we're not psychologists. And so how I deal with that is, in my opinion, in the voice studio, it's happened a few times actually in more performance classes rather than in the one-on-one, but I choose emotions that don't go there yet. Yeah. Because I do think if the goal, my job is to teach them how to automate, how to get this in their voice in the most motor efficient, easy way that is flexible, so that then when they do get to a performance, they can draw from whatever they feel. Because I don't think, I liken it to baking a cake. I feel like we still have to bake the cake before we can decorate it. Because if you decorate it before it's fully baked, that's when I think you fall apart. I know that's what happened to me when I lost it on stage. Yeah. Is because it was the words. I was singing songs my mother taught me, but I was singing it in Czech, and and I just lost the words, but I saw my children and and I just lost it, and I lost everything. And I think had I automated that, had I practiced it enough so that the words were literally in my mouth, and I think I could have rescued myself. So I do think it's the case of baking the cake, getting the automation, and then allowing the student to explore. And if they lose it or they cry or it becomes vulnerable, then I distract. I will find, like, sometimes I'll have the monster, I'll have them hug the monster, and rather than try to engage them in what do you feel, or I do feel it's out of my lane to push that too far.
Yeah.
But I can comfort and I can redirect.
Yeah.
And that's sort of how I
yeah. And I think
that.
Hopefully people, as we're talking, can really hear, because I think someone who might be given to being opposed to the concept of play in practice, and let's face it, it's a big world, so there could be people out there who are.
Yes.
I hope that, because I think one of the if I was to play the devil's advocate, one of the accusations against play in practice could be that it undermines the authenticity and seriousness of what we're trying to achieve. And yet, if anything, it unlocks it. It allows you to plumb the depths of it, and it empowers that automation, that emotive response. It really, in one sense, it acts as a gateway, doesn't it?
1,000%. And I agree with you. I think the term, it's too general a term.
Yeah.
Play to really get at the granular why it's important.
Yes.
But I think in order to have authenticity in performance, your brain needs automation in the mechanism. And in order to get automation in the mechanism, it needs to have a variety of, it's like you can't just have a barometer to predict the weather. It's a predictive mechanism. You need experience that is varied.
Yes.
The other thing I'll mention is, say you were talking about melody earlier and learning melody. An A4 on a piano, you look at an A4 and you push it.
Yeah.
An A4 in the voice, number one, just the pitch alone, we're not talking vowels, has 5 different cortical signals to triangulate that pitch. 5. One is for the adduction piece, one is for the pitch piece. There is, and I told you about Eddie Chang offline, he's the neuroscientist who mapped the entire vocal motor pathway. There is a separate signal for ascending and a separate signal for descending. You have TA and CT muscles that are trying to triangulate.
Yep.
So if you're only trying to hit a note one direction, you're only giving the brain predictive information about the CT action.
Yeah.
So that's why a lot of times I come from above. If a person's struggling with a high note, I have them go da da, because again, you're trying to generate data so that the brain can accurately get that. And I think, just like emotion, we are too literal in thinking the voice it's a quantal instrument, just like a piano, that a note is a note when it's not. And that's why we need play. The second reason is, in order to find authenticity, there's no happy, sad, right? Everything's nuanced. And so I think by giving these kinds of, I have one of my favorite books is this one. It's Actions. It's for actors, an actor's thesaurus. Because the brain likes detail, the brain likes granularity. It doesn't just like happy, sad, slow, fast. The voice wants something more. And so by exploring coloring outside the lines, I think an artist can find the nuance in their authenticity. And so that's the misunderstanding. We're playing, I'm singing a lead Nachtrunträume like a cabaret singer. Well, I'm not going to be a cabaret singer. That's not authentic. Well, we're doing this in practice. That's why I say play in practice. Not performance is performance is a separate thing.
You're getting.
I just dropped something.
You're getting so excited. Yeah.
I know. Yeah.
Look, it is a fascinating space, and I think let me. This is going to sound really kitsch, but we need to learn to play in play. don't we? You know, you have to give yourself the permission. And I think there's so much about the permission giving to oneself to play. And
Yes.
it's that, you know, speaking to the removal of judgment again. And this is going to be difficult for some people to do. I think it reinforces why there is so much benefit in having that private voice lesson, because you can be with a supportive teacher who can encourage and create the right environment and model the playfulness.
Right.
And yeah, these are important things. Such a fascinating topic, isn't it?
It really is. And the more I've been doing play it started in my adult amateur class, because I was teaching adult amateur classical singers, and that was the most self-conscious population I've ever, they've never sung in front of people.
Yeah.
They're very nervous. And that's sort of how it evolved.
Yes.
Was through that class. And I found that the sillier we got, the most incredible sounds came out, and the improvement just skyrocketed. And then, of course, the neuroscience that I was, learning along the way about the vocal motor system and how it's wired, it all just fed each other.
Yeah.
And now I use it, even with my professional singers, we'll do play-based targeted strategies, and they'll discover something new every time. And then they're very authentic in performance.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it is fun. It is fun. I'm not gonna lie.
And it's fun. And
so
it's
fun.
The bonus, the cream.
Yes.
It's fun. Who would have thunk? I mean, we need to finish up, but I'll share a story that I constantly keep in my active memory, and that is, it was a story that was shared with me in my undergrad years back in the 90s, and that was it was a professor, a visiting professor, was sharing how they had spent their career trying to actively get back to the playfulness of their childhood when they would run through an open field singing at the top of their lungs. And the challenge is, as adults, we have gathered a lot of processed information that we have to sort through and synthesize to get back to that innocence.
Right.
And I think the way to do that is through play. It is the gateway.
Yeah. It also removes inhibition, right? It does take, as you said, there are some, and you're going to have some students who are resistant, or just it's much harder for them to release that way. Yeah. But that's why I start small. I mean, as I said, I start a siren warm up where we're each going to gift each other a giant pony, and we go, ooh, and then you gift yourself a tiny pony. And there's just something about breaking the ice with something simple that can sort of, because it's just a siren, right? It's nothing. Yeah. So that's sort of how I introduce it to the newbies, is sort of like, we're just going to do sirens, but I want you to pretend you're gifting, I gift you something, whether it's a rhinoceros, just something large. Anyway, so you can weave it in slowly. Yeah. But watch a lot of baby videos too, because babies are so funny when they learn how to play.
Thank you so much, Heidi Moss Erickson, she, her.
Okay. I've played pants roles before.
It is so good to have you on, and I do hope we can have you on again. I know that you're about to step into a very busy role in your new role, but I'm hoping that given that we do this on your Sunday nights, I'm hoping we can get you back again soon. Hey?
Yeah, I always love chatting with you. Sorry, I get excited, but that's a good sign. I'm so passionate about this.
Your excitement is contagious. I love it. And the commentary in the chat has been just so thankful and grateful towards you. So thank you again. Thank you.
And everyone play. Get some props.
Get some fun. Get some monsters.
Get some monsters.
Get some monsters. Well, there you go, folks. What a great you know, I actually found that discussion quite joyful. I really did. I found it affirming and reassuring. And I think in part one word we didn't explore in that is that one of the very releasing aspects of play is the imperfection of it. It's messy, and I think we're all very good at that as human beings. We're actually all very good at being messy and imperfect, because we are that by nature. And so go out, do some play, be imperfect, give yourself permission to do it, as Heidi's just encouraged us to. Next week, but before I say anything else, hit the thumbs up button. Today's show, awesome. Next week, we're going to come back. We're going to do a Q&A. So make sure you've got your questions ready to go, because I don't think we've actually got any questions in, historical questions waiting. So we're going to need fresh questions next week. Otherwise, there won't be a show. And then the following 2 weeks, I'm not going to lie, I'm going skiing. I am going, if there is snow. Currently, there is no snow. You all need to go and do a snow dance for Dr. Dan this week, because Dr. Dan needs snow to ski. And my annual leave will be very sad if I can't play on the snow. So anyway, I very much hope you all have a great week, and I look forward to seeing you next week. I'm Dr. Dan. Sing well.